Jacka mentally connected to the universal network, waiting for the inevitable. Today was the official declaration of the Gornax's decision to either concede or continue. Deep down, however, Jacka already knew their decision. It was the year 44 billion, Universal Standard Time, and the universe was ending. Unlike the innumerable stories of fiction depicting some cataclysmic threat, the universe was falling to the single constant of reality: entropy. Only 4 known stars remained, each separated by unfathomable distances, and even those possessed an expected remaining lifespan of 100 to 200 more years. Unfortunately, the remaining species were left to see the last stars fade, immortality having long been achieved. What few remained resided on planets teleported into the orbit of the final 4 stars, though these would be lost to darkness when the stars finally died. Universal communication was maintained via a quantumly entangled universal neural network, telepathy, as lesser evolved species would have once called it, combined with archaic notions of an internet. Jacka somberly chuckled to himself. The technology and advancements at their disposal would have seemed like magic to ancient times, and yet even the most advanced technology would not be able to save them in the universe of eternal darkness. Of the 18 lingering sapient species, which once numbered in the millions, 16 had elected to concede to entropy, including his own. That is, those conceding would not attempt to survive past the end of the universe. Immortality did not mean invincibility, and those who elected to concede could still die from various methods. Some species chose mass euthanasia, others would succumb to hypothermia, others still would die of starvation as their food supplies became exhausted. With all species having lost their home planets eons ago, power cells still possessing a finite lifespan, and the heat death of the universe imminent, there was little point in persevering. Even hope was subject to entropy. In his mind, Jacka saw a live feed of the final Grand Universal Council session as the Gornax ambassador approached the podium. Following this, there would be no point in a central government. Every person connected to the universal network was also telepathically linked to each other, allowing for communication and even experiencing the emotions of others, yet not a voice nor thought was heard throughout the universe. The Gornax ambassador placed Z's hands on the podium and gave the camera a forlorn stare. "We, the Gornax, formerly of Universal Sector 8, Jival Galaxy, Home System, Planet Gorna." The ambassador paused as he attempted to choke out his next words. "Have elected to concede." Jacka was hardly surprised. Neither was anyone else in the network. That meant the only species that had elected to continue was the humans. The Grand Councillors silenced the council chamber before addressing the assembly. "The Grand Council accepts the decision of the Gornax. May your species pass peacefully and with dignity." The Grand Councillors stood from their seats and bowed their heads toward the Gornax ambassador. After a moment of silence, the Grand Councillors returned to their seats and addressed the council. "In light of the Gornax's decision, the Grand Council now requests an update from humanity." The Grand Councillors turned in unison towards the human delegates. "As you are now the only species that has refused to concede, we offer you the chance to rescind your declaration of continuance. Will you concede or continue?" The human ambassadors suddenly looked toward each other, no doubt communicating with all of humanity for a consensus. After a few seconds, one of the ambassadors levitated from her seat and floated towards the podium. Despite billions of years of evolution, humans physically remained relatively the same as they had since their emergence, save for a second thumb on the flat side of their hands, and nanotechnological augmentations that had long since become part of their genetic code. Apparently, evolution had decided no further adaptations were required. As the human ambassador reached the podium, the entire universal network fell silent when she spoke. "We, humanity, formerly of Universal Sector 2, Milky Way Galaxy, Solar System, Planet Earth, hereby maintain our decision to continue." The network experienced a surge of annoyance, an eye roll, as humans would call it. Why do they persist? There was clearly no point left, Jacker thought. A sentiment met with approval from the majority of the network. The human ambassador spoke again. We sense the confusion among the network. Please allow us to explain. Humanity has always fought against the inevitable. From unforgivable wilderness, to dwindling resources, to wars, to our very nature, and even death itself. Humanity has always found a way to survive, and we will continue to do so until we cannot survive any longer. We call this concept the human spirit. To explain this concept, we would like to read a work from an ancient human poet. The human ambassador reached into a robe and pulled a single piece of paper. For the first time in what felt like centuries, the network expressed positive emotions, astonishment and awe. With only 200 million trees remaining for respiration purposes, paper was an exceptionally rare commodity. For it to be used on a poem, it must be of great importance. The human ambassador unfolded the paper and read aloud. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright, their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light, wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight. And learn, too late, they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. The human ambassador raised her head and addressed the universe. This poem was written by a human named Dylan Thomas. It has perfectly described the human spirit since its inception. This work was written in 1947, human time, has survived 44 billion years to reach this point, and it describes us still. The human ambassador looked around the council chamber. When this poem was written, humanity believed we were the only intelligent life in the universe, and yet we held hope that others were out there. Even now, as entropy encroaches upon us, we hold hope that we may survive. If entropy is truly the end of our race, then so shall it be. But never will we go gently. Our scientists have developed multiple possible solutions, from initiating a second Big Bang to preserving information for whatever life may follow. We don't know if any of them will work. But whichever may come to pass, we remain dedicated to the continuance of life in this universe. The network remained silent as the human ambassador floated back to her group. Only the words of the Grand Council broke the silence. We appreciate the words and concept of the human spirit. Does any species wish to rescind their declaration? The council chamber fell silent again as the 17 ambassador groups contacted their races. The Gornaks were the first to speak. We, the Gornaks, maintain our position to concede. Another ambassador group spoke immediately. We, the Urksok-T, also maintain our position to concede. One after another, the remaining species maintained concession. By the end, the universal consensus remained the same, 17-1. Humanity's speech was not enough. The Grand Council spoke again. Given the circumstances, the Grand Council hereby confers its power, assets, and privileges to humanity. The Grand Councillors turned to the human ambassadors. It is the last wish of the Final Council and the universe that should humanity prevail, we humbly ask that you remember us. The human ambassadors responded. It is the solemn vow of humanity that the legacy of this universe and all who have ever inhabited it will be remembered. Whether humanity survives alone or ever again encounters intelligent life, the future will know that life in this universe was here, and that we mattered. To quote another human poet, Sappho, I tell you, someone in another time will remember us. The humans looked towards the council and reached out to the network. And the universe will remember you. The human ambassadors stood from their seats and bowed to the council, and by extension to the universe. The Grand Councillors banged their gavel and solemnly spoke. So shall it be. This Grand Universal Council is hereby disbanded. To the 17 conceding races, may all of you pass peacefully and with dignity. And to the humans, the masters and emissaries of this current universe. The Grand Councillors turned again to the human ambassadors. Never go gently. All at once, every ambassador group from every species rose from their seats and bowed to the human ambassadors. Across the network, Jaka could feel millions of others bowing concurrently. Jaka disconnected from the network and stared into the starless abyss outside his window. If there was any hope for life to survive, it lay with the humans. This human spirit of theirs seemed to be a force of nature in itself, as unyielding and perpetual as entropy. Jaka found himself chuckling again, this time more jovially. However small a chance it may be, it was a comforting thought that someone, anyone, may survive beyond entropy and into infinity. Perhaps hope could indeed triumph over entropy, after all.